one of my favorite ANSI DML statements. And I'm being facetious when I say that. It's a new one and it's not really well understood by a lot of folks, but you do see it get used more and more, particularly in ETL sort of applications. Let's talk about
Sure.
merge.
So I originally called this slide Aaron versus Merge because I have some growing problems with this statement, and I try to coerce people to not use it. It has a number of problems, and I think that the syntax itself and the way that it's structured into one statement makes promises about how it will behave that it can't necessarily keep unless you know exactly how to make that happen. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that it is unnecessarily complex. It is not. I understand it's somewhat standard. I know there's some non-ANSI extensions to what SQL Server implemented. The merge command is standard, but when I go to write a merge, I have to look in books online every single time. I'm never, ever, ever going to memorize how that syntax actually works. I always have to go and look because the insert is non-standard, the update is non-standard, at least for what I'm used to from normal DML statements. Another thing that it can introduce is if you have a multi-operation trigger. So you have a trigger that's set on a table for update, comma, insert, comma, delete. A merge statement will actually fire that trigger multiple times, not once. So that's something that if you have existing triggers on a table and you suddenly switch from using separate insert, update, and delete statements, and now you're using merge, you have to be very careful that your logic is still going to do what you expect it to do.
Ah.
So some people will test for various things to see if this was an update or an insert or a delete, and I would strongly recommend that you try those to see that your logic still works the way that you thought. Now, one of the biggest things is that by default, merge does not promise concurrency protection, or nor does it help you prevent race conditions. So by default, it is not really any more efficient than separate statements. What happens is each of the actions that a merge command does operate independently. So it's still atomic in the sense that it's one statement, but you can still have race conditions. And so in order to avoid those race conditions, where if you have merge when matched, when not matched, you can actually have cases where someone's checking for a primary key value, and they both find that it's not there, so it's not matched, and then they both try to insert, and one of them will fail. So
Wow.
in order to do that and make sure it doesn't happen, you have to take the target table and add a hold lock hint to the merge command. And I bet dollars to donuts that 90% of the merge commands out there do not have any hints whatsoever on the target table. I can almost guarantee that. So I have seen people post on Stack Overflow and dba.stack exchange, hey, I have this merge, but I still got a concurrency violation or race condition. And that's because by default, it allows it. Now, on top of that, there are at least a dozen bugs that have been filed against merge where foreign key constraints are not checked, or primary key violations can occur even when it otherwise seems that they couldn't. There are about a dozen, probably more, that are still unresolved as of SQL Server 2012 SP1 CU5. Paul White has found a number of these.
Wow.
Alex Kuznetsov has found a couple. Some of them have been resolved, so there were probably about 30 to start with or that have happened since SQL Server 2008 was first released, and a lot of them happened at the very onset. So a lot of them were resolved pretty quickly by SP1 at the latest. But it's still one of these cases where you have to be very careful to switch from your tried and true methods that you've been using all this time to this shiny new dongle that is not necessarily completely understood and frankly, in my opinion, is not really finished. So because of all these unresolved bugs and the promises that the command inherently seems to make, I try to recommend people to just resist the temptation to use merge. And I posted an answer on stackexchange.com where someone said, how can I optimize this merge? And I said, change it back to the old school method. And I iterate through a lot of these things, and I provide links to a lot of posts and a lot of connect items. So if you take this URL down, bit.ly AB versus merge, that will take you to that answer and give you a ton more details than you could want. You'll be up at night reading this stuff for a couple of hours. So some good information there, I think.
Now, and just to make sure I understand this right, one of the things that I had, and I'll admit, I gave this advice a little bit in a vacuum. I hadn't studied it intimately, so I didn't know firsthand. But I had given some advice around the idea that with to replace this, merge is often called upsert because you can do both an insert and an update with a merge statement. You could say, if the data is there, update it. If it's not there, insert it. And so I had thought that there was going to be some execution plan goodness, saving some execution plan space because you don't have to have all of those different alternatives in the plan cache. But that's not really the case then.
Well, you will see in Management Studio, you'll see one combined plan with a merge operation at the end. But a lot of the actual physical and logical operations that happen behind the scenes are kind of masked behind that. So what you see as the execution plan makes it look like it's this one single atomic statement that couldn't possibly cause any problems, when really behind the scenes, those kind of problems really are possible.
Wow. Okay. Well, I consider myself warned now. That's great advice.
And I would call merge an upsert, delete, no op, because you can insert, update, delete, and you can also make choices where you don't do anything with the source data, depending on the conditions.
That's true.
The conditions that are met. So.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Well, good advice, definitely.